I never let anyone get away with telling me that nuclear energy is clean energy.
Oh, there's one thing that brings us together, and there's one thing tear us apart, and you get to choose the one or the other. There's no room for both in your heart. There's no room. Some people say life has no purpose, and it doesn't matter if you do good or bad. Don't you believe them? Their greed has deceived them. This could be the best life you ever had.
There have to be at least some core of people who give of their substance and not their surplus. Somebody's got to give so hard that they're willing to set their lives aside for some period of time to do the job that needs to be done.
I'm Peter Alexander. I'm Executive Director of the New England Coalition. The purpose of this meeting is to familiarize everybody with some of the technical issues and to share ideas on how we can be most effective in this valiant work of trying to eliminate a nuclear power plant from our midst.
How long have you been involved in the coalition?
As a volunteer for probably the better part of 10, 15 years.
Wow. But that's not a record by any means, is it? Who's been involved the longest? Who's still involved?
Oh, probably folks like Diana Sidebotham.
Well, in 1967, my mother and son and I moved up to her parents' summer place, which is where we are now, to live year-round. And we learned shortly that there was a nuclear plant being built at Vernon, Vermont. And initially we thought, oh, what a good idea.
You did?
To harness the horrible destructive power of the atom for the good of mankind, or so went the story. So we began to read and study, and came quickly to the conclusion that there were many unanswered questions about nuclear power. Not only the immediate safety, but the long-term safe disposal of nuclear waste.
There are a lot of fundraising ideas that have sort of come up over the last little while. One of them was trying to get together a celebrity CD to get people to donate tracks. And Will might be willing to license a track. I've got a Scott Petito over in Woodstock knows James Taylor. James has been active in anti-nuclear stuff.
When that sign says 67 miles, is that
I think it was made up for Mount
Montpelier today, huh?
My name is Azur Moulart.
What's your title with Vermont PERG?
I'm a clean energy advocate for VPERG. Yeah.
How do you respond to people who say that nuclear energy is one of the answers to global warming and carbon dioxide emissions?
The risk of taking advantage of a dangerous source of energy like nuclear and for a short period of time, maybe 50, 100 years tops, and then creating radioactive waste that's gonna take over 15,000 years to go back to zero is a huge risk to take. So why gamble with our future like that? You know, we shouldn't be bargaining with our children's future there.
Alternative sources such as wind or solar, which are so expensive, but of course the nuclear industry has from the beginning been the happy recipient of billions and billions of dollars in federal subsidy. It continues to be the recipient of billions and billions of dollars in federal subsidy. And the cost of containing these wastes, if in fact they can be contained in perpetuity, is simply monumental, and we're leaving that to our children and to future generations as well. It is not cheap electricity. It is expedient.
And what about the fact that, was it yesterday, that they just passed the new energy bill, which contains money for a new round of nuclear?
Not only does it contain money for a new round of nuclear plants, but also less stringent licensing restrictions.
In the energy?
In the energy bill.
I didn't realize
Yes,
that.
yes. No one in the world knows how to store in perpetuity very deadly nuclear wastes, to keep them isolated from the environment and from people.
So renewable energy, there's all this abundant sunlight, it's available, there is so much more energy in the sun that comes down every minute than what we would use in a year, but the problem is making it useful.
You said you were a lobbyist?
Yes.
Were you a paid lobbyist?
For about
the
2 years I was, yes, for the coalition.
And then what happened?
That was when, after that, I retired from anti-nuclear work.
Having put 16 years of your life
Yes, after
into...
putting 16 years in.
So it's a solar house in the middle of the woods?
Yeah, it's a tricky situation, but we make it do.
You found a patch of sunlight.
And of course, this was directly inspired from the work with the coalition. We couldn't afford the driveway, and we also couldn't afford electric power from the road out there. It's about a $400 investment sitting on the roof up there. I think it was going to be $8,000 to bring power lines into this house site.
And these two little panels do what for you?
These two little panels run 2 computers and printers and stereos, television, VCR system, energy efficient lighting. Everything's really energy efficient, low power stuff, laptop computers. So
do you consider yourself not a mainstream person?
Well,
I mean, before you got into all this, were you kind of a hippie type of person?
Oh, no, I was never a hippie at all. In fact, I was in science when I was in high school and college, and I was very excited about science and still am. But in high school, we of course got the obligatory tour of Vermont Yankee. And at that time, I'm a science fiction fan. Nuclear power is this very glamorous, and it's a big machine, and machines always fascinate me. So I was quite excited about nuclear power when I learned about it in high school, and I did my, major report on it. As a proponent, it was a great thing. And then I went to school. I was at college in Dartmouth, and this was in 1977 to 1981, I was at Dartmouth. 1979, 3 Mile Island melted down right in front of all of our eyes. All I needed was the fact that it melted down, because what they had told us at Vermont Yankee was that, nuclear power plants cannot have accidents. And I believed them. I mean, I believed them, and I believe in technology, so I believed that that was true. And then people at that time were talking about, well, if it does go, we may have to evacuate even the East Coast because the winds and everything were coming this way. And it's like, right, okay, that something didn't work. Something was wrong here.
That was way down in Pennsylvania.
And
You're
was all
up
the
in
way,
Vermont.
yeah. But also, and so I didn't become active at that time, but that fact made a very big impression on me that okay, they're not right. These machines can break down. These machines can threaten our lives in ways that the industry was not acknowledging or not wanting to come clear with.
The regulators never anticipated the kinds of aging phenomenon that take place in these power plants. They never calculated the kinds of erosion and corrosion, they call it erosion corrosion, that takes place in the steam piping, and they never counted on the kinds of effects that radiation would have on reactor vessels, never figured it. And now they're trying to back pencil it all.
But the amazing thing is now they're talking about 20-year license extensions and
That's right.
upgrades. And meanwhile, all the plants are 40 years
Yeah.
old, and so it's kind of, isn't that kind of a contradiction?
Well, yes, it is.
My name is Brian Holing. I'm the Deputy Director of Division of Extra Projects in Region 1 nuclear power plants. And for those of you, many of you were here last year and the year before, they are our opportunity to give an assessment of the plant, how they've operated last year, a summary of the findings. A lot of the folks following Vermont Yankee in particular are very aware of the process and issues. So
this just shows some of the typical inspections that we do.
So you've been here for 21 years?
And I'm actually a second generation because my dad was the engineering manager that built all the plants.
Really?
So
So you have great faith in it?
Oh yeah, I was born and bred to be in nuclear power. That's what they say.
Clay was saying about these dry casts, those last like 100 years maybe.
It's not a permanent solution to that.
No.
And how long should they last?
He was saying 100 years, and he's saying really like dry cast storage is like a euphemism for nuclear waste dump. It just sounds nicer.
Right. It sounds safer, but 100 years is nothing.
And that's for the fuel rods, right?
Billions of
The
Yeah, and
costs are
spent
for the
fuel.
fuel rods?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll last how long?
What wasn't it like 4 billion years is their half-life or something?
Yeah, for
Much
uranium.
longer than the Earth has been.
Yeah. No, I think it's like 2.4 million.
So the whole life would be almost basically as long as the Earth has been in existence.
Which
That's
is
crazy.
way longer than humans will be around.
Sadly, it often takes a tragedy for consciousness to change in the direction it needs to, and we would hate to see that happen, but so many cases in history of disasters leading to real reform and new kind of awareness.
There's fewer and fewer channels to avenues open to people, the general public, to oppose nuclear energy because it's so much a revolving door between the industry and the quote-unquote regulators.
Right. Maybe like on a basic psychological level, people don't expect disaster to happen.
And they don't want to think about it.
They don't want to think about it. If they think about it too much, it could really make your day miserable, I think.
Welcome to this public hearing dealing with dry cask storage at Vermont Yankee. I'm Representative Robert Dostison, and I represent the towns of Waterbury, Duxbury, and Huntington.
Senator Ginny Lyons representing Chittenden County.
Representative Jim Maslin, Deptford, Sharon, Stratford, and Norwich.
Sarah Edwards, and I represent Brattleboro.
Steve Darrow, I represent Dummerston, Putney, and Westminster.
I thank you for this opportunity for input about what to do with all of the nuclear waste produced at Vermont Yankee. I don't think there is a good option. Nothing can ensure the storage of nuclear waste for thousands of years. We can't even begin to think that scientists or anybody living has that kind of force.
We've had experience over the past few years of how much responsibility executives of these corporations are willing to take on. They pretty much escape.
I'm glad to hear, finally, people saying because of the long life of the waste and the toxicity of it, why do we keep making more of it? It just seems so ridiculous that if it's that bad and has to be kept safe so long, why do we keep making more of it?
Over the years, I found out that nuclear power is just a fancy way to heat water to make steam.
I've worked as a senior policy Fox, analyst for Public Citizen on the issue of spent nuclear fuel. Spent nuclear fuel is the most toxic substance on Earth. It remains radioactive for hundreds and thousands of years. It can catch on fire. A fire would devastate an area the size of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts forever. The elephant in this room is the fact that spent nuclear fuel is the product of a nuclear power plant. It is not waste or a byproduct. When reprocessed, it creates the main ingredient in nuclear bombs.
Over 20 years ago, after graduate school, I worked at the Graduate School of Oceanography in Rhode Island on a project for the Department of Energy. It was my job to find sites in the Northwest Pacific for subseabed disposal of high-level radioactive waste. It was a consortium of 14 countries that were looking for safe repositories throughout the world's oceans to bury nuclear waste over a period of up to 75 million years. The project was abandoned after about 20 years of effort. All attempts to come up with a means of safely sequestering radioactive waste for tens of thousands of years have failed. And now we're faced with a future where we're going to have these dry cast storage sites scattered from coast to coast where there used to be reactors.
Represent Chester, Andover, Baltimore, and North Springfield.
We had asked the two committees, the Senate and House committees on energy and natural resources, if they would be willing to conduct this joint hearing this evening. It is often said that one of the great strengths of Vermont is the fact that it has a citizen legislature. I think as we look out at the audience this evening, we realize that another strength is the willingness of our citizens to participate in helping inform that legislature.
Each of you will be given up to 3 minutes to testify, and we have a timer. Representative Klein is our timer.
My name is Jeff Melvin. I'm a system engineer at Vermont Yankee. Prior to my arrival in New England last year, I spent 12 years as an operator at Arkansas Nuclear One. In 1996, we at Arkansas Nuclear One embarked upon our own dry fuel storage program. By the time I left, 24 casks had been loaded with irradiated fuel bundles and stored on a specially constructed concrete storage pad. One of my jobs was to visually inspect each cask, and this is done twice a day, every day.
I appreciate your coming down to this part of the state. I want to start by reading something from a book called The Nature of Vermont by Charles Johnson. These original inhabitants lived during the dying ages of the last ice age, and later, roughly between 12,000 and 9,500 years ago. This was the period when herds of caribou and mammoths ranged over the tundra plains, and seals, walruses, and whales swam in the newly formed Champlain Sea. 12,000 years ago is half the first half-life of nuclear waste that we're talking about.
Hello. My name is Crystal Scheffler. I was born and raised in Lamoille County, a fourth-generation Vermonter. I am your typical pickup truck driving, horseback riding, cow milking, true blue Vermont girl. And I support Vermont Yankee and dry cask storage. I realize there is a lot of opposition to VY, but I have complete faith in the legislature.
And my name is Paul Blanche. I have more than 40 years experience in the commercial and military nuclear field. The National Academy of Science last week released its study on the risk of spent fuel storage. Dry cask storage presents less risk than wet storage in the spent fuel pools. However, both dry storage and wet storage present risk to the general public. Combining both dry cask storage and wet storage, the risk to the public is increased. We have two different storage methods, and just taking some of the fuel out does not reduce any of the risk associated with the wet storage.
My name is Deb Katz. I'm with the Citizens Awareness Network. There are no good choices when you deal with nuclear power and its toxic waste. There are only better choices over really bad ones. This bind is in itself unacceptable and intolerable, and it's made worse in this post-9/11 world. We need to protect our community, but we don't want to help Entergy transform its license termination into a scheme for relicensing this vulnerable, corroding terrorist target. The GE Mark I and II reactors, and Vermont Yankee is a GE Mark I, are structurally the most vulnerable reactors in the country. Vermont Yankees, filled to capacity, elevated fuel pools pose an unacceptable risk to our tri-state community. The National Academy of Science is calling for early removal of fuel to improve dry cask storage. Not the dry cask storage that exists now, but in fact, improved storage, bermed with earth and separated from each other by 20 feet instead of 6 feet apart. On-site storage of fuel should be tied to license termination.
I was the Department of Energy representative and energy attaché at the American Embassy in Tokyo, Japan. For 10 years, I was responsible for international energy matters and assisted U.S. companies to expand sales in Asia. It is not the job of the Vermont legislature to stem the tide of progress. The world, looking at the Kyoto goals, is rushing to expand nuclear generation as the sole realistic 21st century technology to supply growing baseload world demand.
I can't believe I'm listening to people talk about a green and clean source of energy when you can't clean up the waste of it. When you're producing something that you cannot dispose of, you stop producing it.
Do I start? My name is Guido Condasta. I live in Winchester, New Hampshire. This is not a local question. This is a question for the United States. And I say this is a question to be decided by the people of this nation who have the right, and the people of this area have the right to be the judges in this action by giving their votes to decide whether or not this nuclear waste should be continued to be produced day after day and night after night. We, the people, have that power.
Entergy Vermont Yankee is the low-cost producer of a green 1/3 of Vermont's electrical energy. The New England Coalition on Nuclear Pollution would not have built Yankee. Their valuable observations and insights promote their agenda of making it go away. They are having their say, but can't have their way. Yankee is here. It is useful. Radioactive waste is here. It is dangerous. It will remain in Vernon even if Yankee is shut down.
We felt strongly that it should shut down in 2012 when the license expired.
How come, if I could ask, were you willing to move so close to a power plant?
We tried to talk my daughter out of it. She picked Brattleboro, and we followed our grandchildren here.
I went to an Atomic Safety and Licensing Board hearing in October, and that was like all day. Yeah. And it was very complicated and technical, and I think Diana Sidebottom was impressed that I went there. In fact, it was 2 days, and yeah.
This year, NEC has been a full party in Vermont Public Service Board proceedings. The only citizen group challenging ENVI's request for power increase. The first such challenge by any entity anywhere. We filed a petition to intervene in the NRC review process to oppose Vermont Yankees' power increase request. This marked the first time any entity had challenged a federal uprate proposal. The case will be long and expensive. Ray Shaddis has filed several separate petitions with the NRC on serious technical issues. We continue to advocate for energy efficiency and renewable sources.
It's here. Where are you, Wendy? Wendy is such an amazing inspiration to me. I know Wendy's on a very limited income, and I don't mean to embarrass her by saying this. Wendy gives a significant portion of her income every month. Every single month, I find a check from Wendy Bernard. And I almost cry when I get this check, because I know the money that she gives to us means a lot to her. And it means a lot to me, and it makes me very, very conscious of the fact that I have to be very careful about how we spend our money. When people are giving of themselves to such an extent, I have a fiduciary duty to every single person to spend our money wisely. And I think we do a pretty good job. But thank you, Wendy. Thank you very much. And we've got two people in a room here who have done more to collect petition signatures. We've had a petition circulating in the communities of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts for some time, encouraging the governors of all three states to call for an independent safety assessment. Governor Angus King asked the chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to conduct a special safety assessment at Maine Yankee to prove to the people of Maine that Maine Yankee was safe to run. And Shirley Jackson, who was then chairman of the, and she insisted upon being called chairman, of the NRC, ordered an independent safety assessment, which turned up something in excess of 3,000 maintenance and safety violations, much to everyone's shock. And eventually, although they declared the plant safe to run, they eventually, citizen pressure caused the utility to suggest that although it's perfectly safe, it's not economically viable to fix all those things, so they shut the thing down. You're all wearing a sticker that says ISA, but it means independent safety assessment. And this is a long way around to the fact that Paul and Alicia, please stand up. They've been circulating this petition. They brought in hundreds and hundreds of signatures.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn the 34th annual meeting of the New England Coalition. It is my delight to introduce to you Cree Lintelak, Director of the Lintelak Foundation.
And I'd like to introduce my husband, Phil. I never let anyone get away with telling me that nuclear energy is clean energy. Radioactive waste is not clean material. Radioactive waste is one of the more toxic substances known to man. And despite the fact that nuclear provides electricity without creating air pollution or greenhouse gases, the nuclear waste remains the Achilles heel of the nuclear industry, and it always will. Not to mention the proliferation of nuclear weapons. I consider that also an Achilles heel of the nuclear industry. Dry casks at Vermont Yankee will one day be what I call nuclear orphans, having outlived their reactors, just like the other waste sites scattered coast to coast in places where reactors used to be, each with its own security force and maintenance crew and exclusion zone forever. A new technology promises clean hydrogen produced in clean nuclear plants. Will Greens go for it? You know, I really do need your help to figure out how to respond to some of these after I stop shaking. Insanity continues, and we need to be able to address that. And I wanted to say, to continue on with what Peter, Alexander, and Ray Shaddis are about, and they are so appreciated, and Clay Turnbull as well in the legislature. I'm there many days, and their scholarship, their knowledge, their conversation, their ability to really sit down with people and talk about the details of the issues are so appreciated. And, you know, you are the intellectual world. You are the ones that we count on. Thank you.
The thing that I see from listening to George Bush and all the other people out there who are pro-nuclear, the theme is clean and safe. So if there's anything we're gonna have to do, it's a simple message, you know, dirty and dangerous, one-line statement that could be on the radio, on billboards or whatever. One more time.
Welcome to the 35th Annual Membership Meeting of the New England Coalition. Principal speaker today, Ira Helfand from Physicians for Social Responsibility.
Your group has been doing this since 1971, 35 years at this point, and I'm really in awe of the dedication and the persistence of this group.
You know what that siren is?
I don't.
You don't?
I thought it was the noon whistle.
It's testing the nuclear plant, evacuation plan.
Oh.
They do it once a month.
Gosh.